Hello, we're so happy to have you.
Nice to be here.
You mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rose Grace. I'm originally from St. Louis. I moved over to the Illinois side about 2.5 years ago. I am a student at SIUE, and I'm finishing my BFA in ceramics and my art education degree, and I'm student teaching here at Mount Olive.
Well, we have chosen you to be our artist of the month. My apologies about that. You're new, and you're only staying for a little bit, so I'm going to run through how we do this for you. I'm going to ask you some questions. You answer them to the best of your abilities. Let's get into it. How'd you start getting into art?
So I've always been a tinker, a fixer. I like to build things a lot. So the very first memory I have of personal art outside of the classroom would be building popsicle stick buildings in my basement. I used to make very intricate, like 2-story buildings and pools and fences and yards. So that's really where that began.
What's your favorite art medium?
Oh, so I have two that it's very difficult for me to choose between. I am a ceramics major, so I love pottery and clay, but I also got into glass blowing at SIUE, and it is very hard to get away from. It's very energizing. It's hard to step away from that medium. And I think that glass is probably one of my favorites for that reason. Just because it gets your adrenaline going, you're super excited and everything's super fast. So yeah, I'd say glass is probably number one, ceramics number two.
You wouldn't expect that given the fact you're majoring in the other. What's your favorite thing to draw, or in your case, make, or anything of that sort?
Yeah, so asking specifically about drawing, I actually do probably the least amount of drawing than anything else. I like to draw things in perspective, so like buildings, architectural things, but when it goes beyond drawing, I like functional wares the most. So things that you can use in your everyday life that elevate the normal object. So when you have like a blown glass cup or a handmade ceramic object, it makes the interaction between the object that you're using and how you're using it elevated, and that you don't generally think of when you're drinking out of like a normal Target mug. You're not thinking about like how the mug was made, what it went through, but when you're using an item that is handmade, that has gone through all of these processes, it elevates the experience.
What is, in your opinion, the worst art medium you've ever had to use?
That's a hard one because I like all art mediums. Like anything that you can create is just awesome in my opinion. I think if I were to choose any art medium that I don't like, it would probably be oil paints, just because I like things to dry and to layer things on top of when I'm painting, and oil takes forever to dry. So you end up with a lot more blending, which a lot of artists use to their advantage, but personally that's not what I like.
What is the best achievement you've done with your art?
So I recently had my BFA show at SIUE. It's a giant exhibition where you get to display your artwork. And I actually have a book with a couple of images. Can they see images from? Okay. All right. So this very first page is actually a panoramic view of my exhibition. I made 3 glass desks that are cast glass. The table tops and the chairs are made out of glass that was formed in a kiln. I have some slumped glass trays, some ceramic milk cartons, and then these are ceramic posters. I'm all about material studies, so using materials in a way that aren't normally used that way is like my favorite thing. So, I mean, I could talk for hours and hours about the different little pieces and the techniques that I used in order to make these, but this was probably my biggest exhibition to this date. Right now, I'm just waiting to hear from some galleries where I might be able to install this installation.
If I may ask, what is cast glass?
Okay, so there's a difference between glass blowing and cast glass. So when you're glass blowing, you generally require a kiln or a furnace that holds your hot glass, and it costs a lot of money. So at SIUE, there's only glass blowing every other semester. I am the president of the glass club at SIUE, and because of that, I have access to the glass studio when there is not class in session. So what I did to my advantage was I used my kiln to form glass. So you make a mold out of plaster and silica, and then you add glass. They're like nuggets of glass, which is what you would charge or fill your furnace with. And I put those directly in the mold and then put them in the kiln to fire, and they slump and become one sheet of glass.
That's very interesting. So you are in school for pottery? Ceramics?
Yeah, ceramics. They don't have a degree for glass at SIUE. It's seen more as an elective. But I have considered doing a master's in glass blowing.
What are you planning to do with this education?
So my goal in life is to teach art. I have always wanted to teach art, even though I like being an artist outside of school. I really like just being able to work through things, and art is a little bit different from your other subjects where you're talking more about like your personal life and your themes that go into your artwork. And that really intrigues me and interests me, that you can be transparent with your students and with things in art that you can't be in other mediums, which is kind of what my exhibition talks about, where the tops of the desks are clear. So normally in other classes, you might have things that you hide in your desk that aren't normally transparent enough for your teachers to see. But in art, sometimes that opens up a little bit, and we see a little bit of a different side from the students than you would in other classes.
What, if I may ask, what's the most meaningful piece that you've done besides your
The desks.
the desks? Yes.
So other than the desks, the lunch trays actually probably have the deepest meaning. The lunch trays were started off, there was a single tray that I made first, and I made ceramic food to go on top of it. And the title for that piece was Reduced Lunch Program. A lot of schools don't have programs that, I guess, pay for the students' lunches. And I grew up in a school where it was very difficult to qualify for reduced lunch programs. So we had a lot of students that would have a hard time affording lunch. And because of that, that's kind of where the glass lunch trays were born. They are made to kind of elevate the experience of the lunch tray, but also explore the fragility of that situation with food inside schools.
Just how much it could help in the long run with someone. When did you know that you wanted to do this for your career, for your life choices?
So I've always been the type of person to finish art projects early and then walk around and help out my other peers in the class. But it's funny, there was my freshman year of high school, we had art club after school, and art club was primarily used for students who needed more time to work on projects to come in and work on their projects, except for I just was there because I wanted to be there. And my teacher would be like, hey, what are you working on? What are you doing? And I'd just be like, I don't know, give me something to do. And they have this giant storage room that had not been touched or organized in like 20 years. And me and two of my friends spent like an entire year after school organizing this supply room. And my high school teacher was like, you'd be a really good art teacher. And from then it just kind of plugged in my brain and kind of continued from there. And I think it's always kind of been in the back of my head, but I wasn't serious about it until I had a teacher who was really like, you would be good at this, you should continue at this and like think about it, because this is like, I'm serious, like, you should think about this and consider this as a career.
I'll be honest, there is a part of this where I do ask if you're going to continue doing art into your future, and I can say, I think you are going to.
Definitely.
Since you're planning to be a teacher, do you have anywhere lined up
Yes.
for this in particular?
So I have been hired by Carlinville to be their new middle school art teacher. I think middle school is a good grade where it either is a turning point where they love art or they hate art. So I think it's a good place for me to start and kind of build that love for art within students.
Mm-hmm. A good teacher can make or break anything. Mm-hmm. I will be honest, I don't know of many student teachers that we have interviewed in the past, so this is very interesting. Oh my. How did you choose? Did you get to choose Mount Olive, or how did you end up here?
So we don't get to fully choose where we go. We get to provide a list of 3 to 5 schools that we're interested in going to. So because Mount Olive isn't super close to Edwardsville, there wasn't much competition for me to be here. And one of the reasons why Mount Olive actually was my first choice is because I went to a very, very large high school in St. Louis. And when you are student teaching, they really emphasize that it's good for you to see circumstances and environments that you haven't been in before. So because I went to a very large school that had amazing funding and stuff like that, I was like, let's go to a smaller town. Let's go to a smaller school because I've never experienced something like that before. And I think I've learned a lot more than I would have if I went to a school that was like a copy of my high school.
Well, what has your experience been here, since it is quite the opposite of what you have been to?
Yeah, I mean, all positive things. I have really enjoyed my time here. I think some of the major differences between larger high schools like where I grew up and here is everything's a little bit more close-knit. There's a higher level of community within the school, and you guys are able to do a lot more because of that. So like the day before Thanksgiving break, when we had that celebration day, that is not something that would ever be feasible at my high school because you'd have 4,000 students in the gym at once. And you guys are able to do things like that because it's a smaller community. There is a difference within the art programs. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a negative difference, but so like my high school, we had different teachers for different mediums. So there were a lot more elective classes where you were able to specialize in those mediums. So I was able to specialize in ceramics as early as junior year in high school. So that has been a difference for me in how things are structured here versus where I went to school. But that I've learned that doesn't mean that like you guys don't get to specialize in something. If you start art in your freshman year and work your way up to art 4, that's really when you get to specialize and do what you want to do. And you guys still get access to the same mediums and same things that I did in high school. It's just structured a little differently. And I didn't really understand how that worked before I came here.
Are you happy that you chose this school out of the other ones that you could have picked?
Oh, yes, definitely. I have some peers who are student teaching in Edwardsville, and the elementary teachers in Edwardsville actually teach between 3 to 4 different schools. So they only see the students like once or twice a week, and they're constantly running around between schools. So being in a smaller community, not only do you have the pleasure of like having an art teacher who can be here and stay here all day, but this is their home. This is their home base. They can make their rooms the way they want to, and they're not as stressed out and constantly running around between all these different schools and, you know, trying to learn 1,000 students' names. Like it's a lot more difficult than when you have a community that's very well-rounded and the teachers can stay here and make this their home.
With your teaching job, is yours a bigger or smaller school? Because I know that one is at least a fair bit bigger.
Yeah, so Carlinville is a little bit larger. I wouldn't say by a whole lot larger, but I will be able to stay in the Carlinville school the whole time. So I will be able to like make my classroom my home and be able to kind of develop my program the way I want to within one school district.
That's all really interesting. What would you tell someone who's just getting into art?
Just getting into art. Don't be afraid to be transparent. True art has meaning, even if you don't realize it. And sometimes art is made without understanding the meaning in order to process what the understanding of the meaning is.
Well, if you don't have anything else to say, which do you?
No.
We've been very happy and excited to have you, and we're very happy that we could interview you, especially with such short notice.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
We wish you luck in your next job or wherever your teaching career takes you.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck with high school.
Thank you.